one day out of the blue, he came to me panicked because a haha had made it into our house. And I was like, no, remember we left those back in the other town. They're not here. And he was like, no, mom, it's here. It's here. And he said it was coming after him. Well, I picked him up and I started taking him up the stairs, and he had this total conniption. He just started screaming, no, it's at the top of the stairs. It's right there. It's right there. And just as we got to like right where he was pointing, the fire alarm above our heads went off.
They claim that our eyes will just be either slightly different from what they are. We talk these things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiar. It's recording during a thunderstorm.
That's promising, right? That means spring's on the way.
If you want to look at it that way.
Have you heard a thunderstorm start since you were like 12 where you didn't hear Riders on the Storm play in your head?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. On tonight's show, I'm going to be talking with Amie. She's got a Bigfoot sighting from when she was young. One of these blacker than black ones, like just so black that she couldn't even tell any features on it.
Okay, can I ask a question? This is not a critical question.
Staring into a void. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you know it's a Bigfoot then and not a shadow person?
We're basing on
location,
on the witness. It was up in a tree in a place, and
okay, yeah,
it wasn't a bear. And
is this kind of like the thing where you say like I don't know, like a poltergeist outside is a Bigfoot?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a shadow thing of the forest or whatever, but she said she feels it's a Bigfoot, so I think we're going to go with the witness's gut on this.
Here's a question: are there ghosts of Bigfoots?
Yes.
That was definitive.
And I only said it because my feeling is that Bigfoot is a ghost.
Oh,
like
so
some sort of spirit.
Oh, okay.
So, I believe that's what we're dealing with. Oh, we got thunder in the background.
I know that sounded fake, didn't it? But that's real.
Yeah.
I guess we should hurry up and record this before the electricity goes out.
Yes. Hey, it's Monstrous March, everybody. I forgot to announce that last week because it wasn't March yet.
Yeah. February like creeps up on you.
Yeah, because February's so short. Monstrous March has already begun. So much like Squatchtober, I'm doing a drawing every day in the entire month of March, and I'm making those available to purchase. They're all signed and numbered. So far I've done like a sea serpent, a vampire, a werewolf, swamp monster.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
We're on the 5th.
With more on the way.
Mm-hmm.
There's more on the way. I think the vampire is still available at this point, which was one of my favorites I've done.
Yeah, I really like the vampire.
So if you want to get original art, this is a great way to do it. Look for it daily. I post it first on Patreon, then on Discord, so patrons get the first shot at them. After that, I go to Instagram and Facebook. And I'm trying to post them at different times of day. Sometimes I'll post them right after midnight because I'm usually up till 4 a.m. Sometimes I'll post them, 10 in the morning, around lunchtime. I'm trying to post them at different times to give people a chance to grab them, different people a chance to grab them. Because I think during Squatchtober, I was putting them all up at the same time. And people were like, well, it's the same people who are getting them,
And you did promise me a sleaze stack.
Yeah.
But that might be separate. You might just make me a sleaze stack.
Yes. Yeah.
I
haven't decided if I'm doing pop culture monsters or not yet.
Yeah, I know. You're very serious about your monsters, and I don't mean to make light of monsters, but...
No. I mean...
Is a vampire a pop culture monster?
No, because it existed in folklore well before...
All right, that's the...
modern pop culture.
You don't want, like, symbolic things like taxes and death.
But I mean, like, something like a Slee Stack, or someone asked if I would do the Cyclops from the old Sinbad movies and stuff. It's like, yeah, I mean, I might. I'm not against it. I just haven't decided.
I mean, there are historical Cyclopses.
And then someone else asked me if I'd how Brett does February, and she puts out the list beforehand so you can draw along with her. And somebody else asked me if I would do that. I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing. Until I stand at the drawing board, and I say stand because I have a standing desk. Until I get to the drawing board, I don't know what I'm going to draw. I really don't. It's like not that planned out. And I honestly don't really want to hold myself to that, because sometimes, like, if you would have asked me if I was going to draw a sea serpent at all during this series, much less the first one, I would have said no. I don't want to draw a sea serpent. And then it was the first one I knocked out. So sometimes it's better to just kind of
How much did you pay for this mood?
The moody storm.
The moody storm. I have to say, like, having not had a thunderstorm in so long, it's like I'm not usually into thunderstorms, but kind of into it.
So Monstrous March. And that's a great way to help out the show. They go up on Etsy every day.
I think you should put them in little brackets that then have to beat other things till you get to the end. Maybe what you should do is when they're all done, then when people should vote, just say like sea serpent against vampire, who moves on to the semifinals.
That's not a bad idea.
I don't really know how March Madness works, but I know it has to do with
brackets, like
brackets
that.
And basketball.
Maybe we should do that like next year, and then
decide who's going to draw, like,
or something like that.
What you're going to draw based on the brackets.
Yeah, something like that. That might be fun. So no Bigfoot yet for Monstrous March, but there might be one.
He's been vastly underrepresented.
There might be one. I did so many for Squatchtober.
Maybe he's been vastly overrepresented.
Maybe I'll knock out a Bigfoot. I'll probably do a Bigfoot, at least one. There's 31 days. I'm going to run out of monsters at some point.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of just monsters we haven't thought of.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty. And I'm stretching, I would include a ghost.
Yeah.
As a monster, I would include
like a just a paranormal entity.
Yeah. I'm gonna. It's not gonna be specific. It doesn't have to be big and hairy necessarily for Monstrous March. Thanks to everybody who's participated already. Like I said, the vampire's still available. He's like my favorite style of vampire. I always liked the Nosferatu.
Klaus Kinski kind of.
The original Salem's Lot TV series
is your favorite.
That vampire in that, that's one of my favorite vampire movies ever, and was on TV.
I know you said you always had a bit of a qualm with the sort of 90s fascination with making vampires pretty.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, like, that sells vampirism, right? Like, because who doesn't want to be young and beautiful forever?
Right. It's the hot young vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fascination of eternal youth, I think, a lot of times. But I think it's much creepier if the vampire, looks scary and is able, through vampiric hypnosis or whatever, to make the women love him anyway. You know what I mean? If you look like a gorgeous,
like Brad Pitt?
Yeah, if you're Brad Pitt,
you don't need to be a vampire. You can just be a dude.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who cares if you have vampire powers? Like, women love Brad Pitt anyway. It's like this creepy guy that somehow
casts a glamour over you.
Exactly, entice women anyway. It's much creepier.
Which does actually kind of explain our relationship.
Okay. All right.
Wait.
Apparently, I am the monster in Monstrous March.
Oh, you should do you said you were
self-portrait.
Okay. No, I wasn't gonna say that. Wasn't what I was gonna say. I was gonna say you could do the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. I'm not suggesting that I'm a beauty or you're a beast.
Sure, you're not. All right, let's go ahead and talk to Amie. I'd like to welcome Amie to Strange Familiars. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You sent me a message about this possible Bigfoot sighting when you were young.
Yeah. So, I've always, for my whole life, had strange experiences, but this experience just really stuck with me my whole life. So I'm 50. It's been 45 years since this happened, and I've thought about it off and on throughout my life, and it's just stayed with me. And to be honest, I never thought it was a Bigfoot until I started listening to your podcast and realized other people had had a very similar experience.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that's kind of where they were leaning towards. So,
As much as you're comfortable, like, where did this happen and when?
yeah. So when I was little, so the summers when I was like 5, 6, and 7, we lived up at a campground in the Uinta Mountains. And those are kind of on the border of Utah, Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandpa had like this idea of a youth camp up there, and he worked for the county. And so, kind of long story short, my family was up there being like my parents were the caretakers and kind of overseeing the construction of this campground. And it's still there. It's used for like 4-H and Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever. Probably about an eighth of a mile or so from the campground, there is the fishing pond. And my sister, who's 5 years older than me, and I used to walk up there all the time. Sometimes we'd be fishing, just hanging out, kind of goofing around. One time we had been up there for a while, and so we're walking back towards the campground, and she just stops in the middle of the trail, and she's looking up in a tree, and I stop and I look up in the tree, and she says, "What is that?" So I'm looking at this tree, and my first thought was, is it a bear? We'd always been warned about grizzly bears, and, if you see bear cubs, you need to take off, like you don't stick around.
Right. Yeah.
So we're looking at this thing. We just see this thing in a tree, kind of hunched up in it, almost like it's clinging to the tree. And you could tell that it had fur, but it was hard to focus on. It was so black that it was like my eyes couldn't focus on it. Like I couldn't quite make out what I was looking at. And as soon as I said, "Is it a bear?" we both knew immediately that's not a bear.
Mm.
And so we're standing there just trying to figure out what we're staring at. And I remember taking like a step forward towards it to get a better look, and my sister putting her hand on my shoulder to stop me. And like right then it turned and looked at us. And that sounds weird that I know that because we never saw a face. Yet we were very aware that it turned its head and looked at us. And whatever happened then, I am not sure if it made a noise or if it was just some kind of energy coming from it. But whatever happened hit us so hard. It was terrifying. And we just went like running down the trail back to the campground to find adults to tell. And we were very shaken up and scared about what we had seen. But it was definitely black and furry, but it was so black that it was almost like looking into a void.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that before. I've not seen that, but I've heard that before, and it's just so weird. It's such a strange thing. How big?
Yeah.
How big did it look? I know it's a long time ago in your memory, but did it look like the size of one of the adults in your life, or bigger, smaller?
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of remember what size it was because, like I said, the first thought was, is that a bear in the tree? It was not big enough to be like a grown-up bear, but it wasn't small enough to be a bear cub. I would say, like I'm about 5'7" right now, and I would say that it was about as tall as me, but it was scrunched up in the tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So when you got back, did you tell some adults?
Yeah, we told, of course, our parents and some of the workers that were there. And it was kind of funny. I didn't actually remember that these two events were connected. I had to call my sister after I listened to an episode of your podcast, and I said, "Hey, do you remember this?" I actually didn't think she'd remember it because she tries to push anything bad out of her memory.
Mm-hmm.
She remembered it very clearly, like me. She couldn't remember if it looked at us or if it screamed or what happened, but she did remember just the absolute fear that it put in us, and then us running to the campground.
Did she remember the sort of blacker than black thing about it as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So we got back to the campground and we told everybody, and one of the workers that was there, he was probably just a teenage guy there on, working for the summer. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Bigfoot." He got really scared that there might be a Bigfoot around us. And my dad and some of the other guys like ended up putting on this big old hoax that lasted quite a while, where they were like stomping great big footprints around in the campground, and making fake Bigfoot heads to like put outside his window at night. And so they went after him with that, but I didn't actually remember that those two things were connected. I've never connected that with Bigfoot in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Was there any other things that happened around that time or at the campground?
No, I would say that was the only thing at the campground that ever happened that was weird that I was part of. There was one hill that you could go up. I mean, the campground's up in the mountains, but then from the campground you can still go further up. And on one side of the camp, we would go up there and play on that hill all the time. And the other one, we never went up. And it was just sort of an unspoken thing. Like there was just something about that one. We just never went up there. In my memory, it just felt scary and bad. So we just didn't ever go that way. But I couldn't for sure say that was related or why it
Yeah.
felt that way to us.
Yeah. Did seeing this entity in the tree, did that keep you from going back to the fishing pond?
No, which is weird because the next summer, I think it was the second summer we were there, or maybe the third, a boy had gotten attacked by a mountain lion not too far from there. And that scared me to know that there was a mountain lion that would have attacked a little kid.
Mm.
The little kid was the same age as me. That's why I remember it. And yeah, I didn't go places without the adults at that point in time. So that did scare me. I don't know why the thing in the tree, as terrifying as it was, did not stop us from going up there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how, well, I mean, it could be the resilience of kids. It could be, it was a fun place to go. I'm not going to let that stop me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, also maybe just the fact that we didn't know what it was. And so it scared us, but it was like kind of still in the realm of, monsters in a book or something. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like your dad, at least he's pulling these tricks, and the other folks are kind of non-believers. Would that be accurate?
I would say that's pretty accurate, yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of shuts down some speculation and talk anyway, which may or may not be a good thing for kids. Maybe it was a good thing just to sort of make a joke about it, and you can get
Mm-hmm.
back to being a kid instead of worrying about that.
Yeah. Now, there are other people that claim to have seen something up in that area. And I had a cousin that, I mean, he wouldn't have even known that story from when I was little. He told me when we were young adults that he had read a whole bunch of stuff and he was going up there. He just wanted to be like on foot in the woods for however long it took, months if it needed to be. But he was pretty sure that he was going to track down whatever people were seeing up there. So it's not that nobody ever saw anything in that area, but I didn't know that either until I was an adult.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, as interested as I was in this stuff as a kid, I don't remember people talking about it, at all. And it was in the 70s in this area, it was firing off around me. So,
Yeah.
some people talk about it, some people don't, I guess. And I don't know. It's just especially back then, I think it was so like, that's weird stuff. Just let it go, just don't talk about it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I actually had never even told anybody that story until a few years ago when I heard that episode, and I was like, huh. And I did start talking about it a little bit, but yeah, we never even It wasn't something that we ever brought up, even though we both remember it so vividly in our minds.
Yeah, yeah. That blacker than black thing is just so interesting, and I mean, it's like, what is that? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've heard the I've heard the description many times. You know, it's what is that?
Well, I'll tell you something else funny with that. Have you ever, like, do you ever hear that blue jays kind of hang around where Bigfoot is?
I've heard people mention that, but yeah.
So I don't know if that's true or not, but I have always joked about it. And in the fall of last year, I met some Bigfoot hunters at a paranormal convention, and we had a really good chat. Like I was telling them, I had no interest in finding Bigfoot. Like to me, that was scary. And after, we all kind of talked about it, they kind of convinced me that maybe I should be a little more open to it and that Bigfoot's probably not this horrible monster that's out there. They insisted that he's friendly. So I was like, okay, I'll I'll try to be more open. And as I like go out hiking with my dogs and stuff, I have tried to kind of open up to the surroundings a little bit more. But it's funny because I've always joked about the Blue Jays. And right after that happened, I had this dream where all these like really loud birds were out in the tree in front of my house. And I looked out there and I saw them and I thought, gosh, I don't quite recognize what these are. And then I woke up, but it was a weird enough dream that I told my husband about it. And like 2 days later, I'm sitting here in the living room and he's on the porch exactly where he was in my dream. And all of a sudden there's this racket out there. And I get up and look, and all these blue jays are out in my tree. And that's the first time we've ever seen blue jays here. And we've lived in this house for 18 years.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was just kind of a funny coincidence. And then it was right after that that I found my email to you in my draft emails, and it was like 5 years old. So I was like, I don't remember writing it to you, but I remember thinking about writing it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send this.
Oh wow. Wow. Well, last summer was sort of like the Blue Jay year for me. So I love Blue Jays, but I kept finding Blue Jay feathers all summer long. I have a whole collection of Blue Jay feathers for some reason. So maybe
Oh, that's weird.
yeah, maybe they replaced the skulls for me. Maybe I find Blue Jay feathers now. I don't know.
Well, that'd be cool. Mhm.
So you've got some other things that happen in your life as well. Where do you want to start with those?
Yeah. Well, I have like, I just, I just grew up with a lot of stuff happening around us, and my parents' house, it was new construction when we moved into it, and yet like still something is up with that house. And it was enough that like my friends, I never had a friend that spent the night in my house more than once.
Mm,
They would come up if we like camped outside or something, but they wouldn't sleep in my house because it scared them.
wow.
But my oldest son, when he was little, he would see something in my parents' house that he was only 2 when this started. So that's this name that he called it was a 2-year-old's name for what was happening. So he would call it the ha-has. And he was always talking, like, oh my gosh, the ha-has are coming. The ha-has are going to get us. And as he got a little bit older and could talk about what the ha-has were, he would describe them as just heads, like round heads that would chase him, and that there were a lot of them in that house. And like he'd get up to the top of the stairs to go around a corner, and they would chase him back around the corner, and they would always be laughing at him like evilly. He would say like they're like ha 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 ha, chasing him. And he always talked about the one with a mustache. It was the scariest of all of them.
Wow.
And this went on for years. And finally, my ex-husband and I moved across the state. And so we were like 5 hours away. And I told him my son, when we moved, I said, the ha-has, they had to stay back there. Like they did not come with us. They weren't allowed to come here. So, there's no ha-has here. And for the first couple of years that we lived there, he didn't see any ha-has. He seemed fine with everything. And then one day out of the blue, he told me that he panicked. Like he came to me panicked because a haha had made it into our house. And I was like, no, remember we left those back in the other town. They're not here. And he was like, no, Mom, it's here. It's here. And he said, it was coming after him. Well, I picked him up and I started taking him up the stairs, and he had like this total conniption. He just started screaming, no, it's at the top of the stairs. It's right there. It's right there. And just as we got to like right where he was pointing, the fire alarm above our heads went off. And
Wow.
it was so bizarre. I was like, was there really something there? Did he put out so much energy somehow that it like
Yeah.
turned the fire alarm on? But then from then on, I was like, well, what was he seeing all this time? Maybe it wasn't just imagination.
Oh, that's really
Um,
interesting.
he's in his 30s now, and when I asked him about it last time, he said that so even when he was a little kid, he described it as like real people's faces, but now he says, "Oh, it was like cartoon dreams that I used to have, but these were happening in the daytime. It wasn't dreams."
Hmm.
And so I'm also not sure if his mind has just turned it into cartoons,
Right.
just
Yeah.
as an explanation, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. With the whole thing, it's almost like, well, little kids see stuff and they say they see stuff and this and that. And then when you get to the fire alarm going off, I mean, we had a story recently on the show where somebody said something would happen and they'd see something and the shades in the room would drop or go up or whatever, or, the lights would go out, or, I mean, it's always this weird, like, what is the perfect timing of a
Yeah.
coincidence? That's weird.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what it was.
It's also weird. I would think, like, to have a 2-year break, where he says he's not seeing them,
Hmm.
and then just out of nowhere one day, he's talking about him again.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then for it to be just such an intense experience, like the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So, after that, it never happened again after that, but that was the very last time that any haha was in our life.
Well, I guess that's good.
Yeah, I guess so.
May he remain haha free.
Yes. I had another experience when we were living in that same town, though, that was pretty intense, if you want to hear about
Yeah.
another
Yeah,
story.
absolutely.
Okay, so it was actually right around that same time. My husband and we were putting up the Christmas tree, and we had just run out of Christmas lights. And so I had said, "Oh, I'll run up to Walmart and grab a string of lights." And this is in Wyoming. The town we were in wasn't that big. This was like, I don't know, 7 o'clock at night. So it was dark outside already, and there's just not a lot of traffic there. But so I went to Walmart, grabbed these lights, and then on my way home, I stopped at this gas station that was on the corner near where we lived, just to run in and get a couple of Cokes. And I mean, if you think about how quick that actually is, just to run into an empty store, grab 2 Cokes, pay for them, run back out to the car.
Mm-hmm.
I probably was only in there, I would say less than 3 minutes, but let me see if I can explain how this worked, because the gas station didn't have parking in front of the gas station. So if you parked, you had to park kind of at the end. So like the sidewalk ran along the front of the gas station, and then you walked along it and then had to go around the corner, and that's where the cars were parked.
Okay.
And so you couldn't see it from the window of the gas station. But I pull up, there's nobody else at the gas station. I run in there, I get a couple Cokes, I come back out, and I'm walking along the front of the store almost to my car. Like I could see my car. And like maybe 2 steps before I got to the corner of the gas station, I heard like a female voice right in my head. Like it was like they were yelling through a tube that went directly into my brain or something. But it was so loud. And she said, he's around the corner. And it was enough that I stepped off the curb instead of going straight past the corner. I just like swerved and stepped off the curb. And as I did that, I cleared the corner and there was a man standing at the corner and fumbling around on the payphone, and his car was pulled up next to mine. And he looked like, I don't know, I could tell that he didn't know what to do right at that second. And he hung up the phone and he was like, excuse me, like, I'm having trouble with my car. Do you happen to have any jumper cables? Well, first of all, I was only in there 3 minutes and you weren't there when I went in. So
Right. Yeah.
you weren't even here long enough to have a problem. But I think he must have seen me at Walmart and then followed me to the gas station because I had jumper cables right in my back window. I'd used them earlier in the day for somebody and hadn't put them away yet. So he could see them as he's asking me if I have jumper cables.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And I said no. And I was like, no, sorry, I don't. And that just like bought me a couple of seconds because I don't think he was expecting me to say that. And of course, this was back in the 90s. So I didn't like have a key fob for my car. I had to actually go put the key in the
Oh,
door and
yeah.
open it.
Yeah.
And he's standing like at the hood of my car and there's nobody around. And so I was just like, I gotta get my door open. And his back door was open and there were a whole bunch of blankets and stuff on the back seat. And it just, the whole thing was creepy. And so I just hurried, and in that second that he was sort of fumbling for what he was going to say next, I just shoved my key in the car and got the door opened as he came around the front of my car. And my door was in between us. And he was still trying to get me to come over to his car and just help. Like, can you just help me see if I can get it started? Can you, just see if you can push the gas while I, just all that kind of stuff. And about that same time, a woman pulled up to the gas pump and she got out and she looked over and I made eye contact with her. And I just yelled at the guy. I was like, I'm sure if you go inside, they'll help you. And I could tell she just immediately knew what was happening because she ran into the gas station and the guy went and jumped in his car and peeled off. So clearly no car trouble.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm positive that had I not heard whoever the female was yell that to me, I would have walked right into him. Like, I don't know if he had the cord for the phone because he was like going to try to grab me with it. I don't know what he was doing, but he was right there around that corner. And at the time, I just attributed it to like some kind of guardian angel.
Yeah.
And it may have been, but then part of me thinks like he didn't seem like a novice. Like it seemed like he had done something like that before. I don't know. Maybe it was like somebody that had already been nabbed. I don't know who it was, but it was just incredible. And that's what ended up really pushing me to start kind of researching into the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that saved my life?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, certainly he was up to something if he just got in and drove away. That's, he was lying about that much at least. And
Yeah.
you can assume probably more. Wow. Yeah, that's creepy. Well, yeah, was it the guardian angel? Was it you, some part of you that just knew that was, screaming at you, or was it something else? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been me. I had, when I was just a little kid, like maybe 4 or 5, I have also another memory of myself hearing somebody I would say that they were giving me advice, I guess, but very stern advice that I followed my whole life. And when I think back to who I think told me that, like, I think as a little kid, I also attributed it to angels just because, I don't know, my religious upbringing or something. But
Yeah, yeah, sure.
when I really think back to it, what I think it was me. Like if I had to like put a name on it, it was almost like my grown-up self telling my little self
Wow.
that I needed to do this.
Can you share that advice, or is it personal?
It's it's probably too personal for me to share that
That's
on
fine.
here,
That's
but
absolutely fine.
yeah.
No worries about that. Wow. But yeah, that's interesting. At what age were you when that happened before?
I Judging by where we were living, I had to be like 4 or 5.
Okay. And you took your own advice, or if it was you, you took the advice that was given, you're saying?
I did. I did take the advice, yeah.
And did it work out well?
Yeah, it did.
All right. Well,
It was some of the best advice I ever got.
okay. There you go. Wow. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. All,
Hmm.
all right. Yeah, I think, who can say what would have happened if you didn't take the advice of the whatever woman was forcefully telling you that someone was around the corner, but sounds like a good thing you did.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. So from that you sort of pursued the paranormal a little more.
I did. Yeah. And some on my own, just researching. And then about 16 years ago, I joined a paranormal group here in Indiana. And so I've been investigating with them for all that time.
Wow. In terms of paranormal groups staying together, 16 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's fun, but it's just also so interesting. We always have just the most interesting experiences. And I think every time you have something that you can't explain, it makes you want to go again and see, like, can you repeat it,
hmm
or can you figure it out?
Are you mostly doing like haunted stuff, or what kinds of stuff are you looking into?
We mostly do haunted stuff. We have been on some other investigations, like, well, so the team went on a Bigfoot hunt before I actually joined the team. But since I've been there, we've also gone on like a pukwudgie hunt. There was a woman that thought that she was seeing something in kind of the wooded area outside of her house, and it scared her enough that she had called 911. And I mean, her story was pretty solid. I don't know if I believe in pukwudgies, but I want to take people at face value when they tell stories because,
hmm
I mean, I have crazy stories.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, she said that she was seeing like a little short being with red beady eyes, and that it had ran at her door, like ran at her at one point in time, and it had been just like sitting out there watching her house. So we went looking to see if we could find anything like that. And it was around, I don't I know you're a little bit familiar with Indiana, but like Mound State Park, where there's the I don't even know if they're really burial mounds or whatever they are, the artifacts,
hmm
the great big mounds that everybody speculates about what's under them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of Native American folklore in that area, and pukwudgies would fall into that.
Oh yeah.
So we gave it a shot. We did not find anything, but
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it goes. What are some of the more like interesting or moving things that happen on investigations? Can you give me an example of one or two?
sure. So, well, I'll give you one that some people like to pick apart because it was using a walkie-talkie and those can be manipulated. But a couple of investigators and I were at a place called, I want to say, the Gaslight Inn in Indianapolis, and we're sitting in this room. And sometimes, during at a ghost hunt, I guess, you just end up chit-chatting about whatever
Oh,
because
sure.
there's so much time spent sitting in the dark asking questions.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
uh, a lot of times, some of the best stuff we get is when we are just chit-chatting, talking about whatever.
I find that to
And
be the
so,
case as well. Yeah.
yeah.
You kind of relax and you're not so focused on results or whatever. And yeah,
Hmm.
that's when it'll pop off.
Yeah. So we're just sitting there talking, and a couple of them were talking about like dolls and SpongeBob and stuff, just some things that kids were really into at the time. And all of a sudden, on just one of the walkie-talkies, like we had multiples in that room, and one of the walkie-talkies, like a little girl's voice came on it and was just like jibber jabbering about a whole bunch of stuff. We couldn't quite make out what she was saying, but we all kind of looked at each other. And then, so one of them said, can you tell us that again? Do you like SpongeBob? And then the voice said, you can hear me?
Ooh.
And it was chilling mostly because like it went along with the conversation and it only came across one of the walkies. Like I felt like if it was somebody actually on another device talking to us, it would have come through on the other ones that were in the room.
Yeah,
But
you'd think. Yeah.
yeah, and so that one has really always stuck with me. But more recently, we have been doing kind of our own version of the Estes method. So the difference would be that, with the Estes method, you're like putting on the headphones and blindfolding yourself, and you're supposed to be kind of a sensory deprivation. You're
Right.
not supposed to be able to hear people's questions.
Yeah, so you have one person who we usually call it the seer, for lack of a better name, and they have the headphones on and they're blindfolded. They're listening to the ghost box, which is cycling through radio stations and answering questions that they cannot hear. And this is to separate that person from the person asking the questions. They can't hear the person asking the questions. They can't hear what questions are being asked. And the person asking the questions can't hear what's coming over the headphones. So it gives us separation. So at that point, if you get relevant answers to questions, it feels like it means more. At least to me, it does. It seems like it's a little bit more meaningful than just random, radio playing out loud, that everyone can hear.
Yep, yep. And I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken it a step further and we've started doing these things. That the group I'm with is Indiana Spy. And so we've been calling them spy sessions, but we put two people under. So we have two seers
Okay.
and we will put them in different parts of the building wherever we are. So they're completely separate from us. And then like the people asking the questions will be in a third location. We will use our cell phones and put them on speakerphone, but the people asking the questions mute our cell phones so they can't hear what we're asking. We can just hear what they're saying back.
Okay.
So they're far away. There's no way that, because I don't know if you've noticed sometimes, even with headphones on, it's hard not to at least know that somebody's asked the question. Like you might not know exactly what they're saying,
Right.
but sometimes you can hear the mumbling of somebody
Yeah, and
talking.
I've definitely, like with Tyler and John, when I've said something that was they found humorous and they started laughing, in the context of the thing, they found whatever answer I gave as humorous. Like, I could definitely hear laughter happening, which will throw me out of
Yep.
it. Honestly, like that'll kind of you get into sort of a trance when you're doing it, and
Yeah.
somebody laughing can actually throw you out of it. Yeah.
Yep. So this kind of eliminates that piece of it. So we've had some really interesting sessions, and one of the places that we've been where we've had some of the best luck was in Ohio called Inspiration House,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an Airbnb. You can rent it and go stay there and do stuff. So we have used that method there twice. We've gone and stayed there twice. And the first time it was really interesting because it sounded like the two seers, even though they were in completely different rooms, it sounded like they were having a conversation with each other.
Okay,
Like,
one second before. So, are each of them being asked separate questions or the same questions going to both of the two different seers in the two different places?
There's only like one question being asked, and
Okay.
so either of them would be answering the same question.
All right.
Yeah. But we've had it happen quite a bit where it actually sounds like not only are we getting answers, but sometimes it veers off and they're talking to each other.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so the last time we were there, it was remarkable. So I was in the questioning group, and we had two of the guys on our team were in, opposite ends of the house from each other, and then on a different floor from where we were. And so we're asking questions. There were four of us in the questioning group. So myself and another investigator, and then my daughter was there, and one of the other investigators' daughters was there. And she was a 13-year-old at the time. So, we're going along asking questions, and then we hear the 13-year-old's name comes up, and we're like, yeah, she's here. And then the other person says 13. And I said, yeah, she's 13. How old are you? 14.
Huh.
I'm like, okay. And so we continue like along these questions as if maybe they wanted to talk with the 13-year-old, like maybe this is a kid, I don't know. But then she gets up. She's like, oh, I've got to go get a drink of water. So she gets up and starts walking towards the kitchen. And one of the guys says, wait, where's she going? And the other one says, come back.
Huh.
And we're like, oh, what?
Wow.
So she sits back down. We continue on. And then it was kind of funny because I had a not so great experience in the basement there one time. Oh, it wasn't terrible, but just very uncomfortable. And so I didn't really want to spend time in the basement. And it seemed like every session we had was trying to get me to go to the basement. And so as we're like asking these questions, we finally said, okay, we'll make you a deal. If you tell us your name, we'll go to the basement. Or no, we said, we'll make you a deal. And it said, no deal.
Huh.
And we were like, oh, come on. Like, well, this is the deal we'll make. If you tell us your name right now, we'll go to the basement. And then immediately a name came across. But it was just so weird that that we could say, we'll make a deal with you. And that immediately, no deal. If, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just too coincidental. That doesn't seem like something, it's never come across before. It's just weird phrasing for.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
at the right time.
Did you honor your part of the deal? Did you go to the basement?
Yes.
Okay. Did anything happen?
Did I like it? No. But yeah, so we've had really good experiences doing it that way.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting.
Well, I know that some of yours are out in the woods. I don't know. I don't know how you would do it out in the woods.
Yeah.
Just by yourself, but.
Yeah, when I'm doing that, especially at night in the woods, I make people, swear upon I will get up and punch you if you mess with me when I'm doing this, but B, you're gonna stay there. Don't leave me alone. This isn't a joke. I'm blindfolded, sitting in the woods in the dark. You don't leave me alone there. But this sounds like a very, very interesting process. So the two separate people with headphones on, seers, for lack of a better name, they each have a different ghost box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way to get those to sync up. So it's not like they're hearing the same things come through. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really, really interesting experiment. That's the great thing about this stuff, is when people start taking these things well, let's try it this way, and how can we change the experiment? That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. Not surprising at all that it would seem like they would have a conversation at points.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind that that's what happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It just flows so naturally back and forth. And
yeah,
I'm just not sure how you would ever have that many words come across, that were just random, that would make long conversations like that
Oh yeah,
happen.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I can't tell you when I'm deep into it in like the sort of trance state aspect of it. I'm just saying what I'm hearing, and I don't know for sure what's coming over the radio. The one we did out there in Indiana, there was I had a curse word that came out, and I'm sure that wasn't on the radio. You're not allowed to say that word on the radio.
Yeah.
So, but that's what
Yep.
I heard. That's all I heard. I was just saying what I heard. So yeah, I don't know what
We've
happens.
noticed that same thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit about it because like it seems like the best sessions we have is when you can just let go and just listen and just say whatever you hear, and that might not come through the radio. Like we don't know. Is it a psychic component that we're hearing, or is it like just I don't is something being impressed on our minds like from something else? I don't know, because you're right. You're not going to be hearing curse words through the radio, but we hear them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't even listened to it yet. I have to go back and listen. I've been so busy with getting the book out and episode 500 and stuff that right when I got back from this last trip to Indiana. But we did a session in a cave there, and we were I forget how far back it was in this cave underground, like 100 yards or something. I forget, and I couldn't. There was no radio reception, so I was literally just getting static. And I just, after a while, I said, look, I'm not getting any words, but I'm just going to tell you the impressions I'm getting. So I have to listen back to that one and see if anything makes sense that came through on that
Yeah.
one. I haven't even listened to that one yet.
You know what? We did the same thing when we were up in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
There's no radio stations up there. And so we had that same issue where the spirit box was just static the whole time. And you just had to like go with what impressions you were getting. And I'll tell you, some of them were like really compelling.
Mm. That makes me want to go back and listen. Well, that's inspiration. I'll go back and check it out. So,
Yeah.
well,
Well, if you get a chance, try it. Try the spy session and see what you think.
yeah, I would love to. It's a great idea. I love the idea of two series and the separation like that is fantastic. Yeah, I think if sometimes there's only two or three of us, and it wouldn't be possible. But when we get a bigger group, I'll definitely try that. I have
Yeah,
some places I definitely like to put into effect right now. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
sure.
Well, Amie, thank you for sharing your stories. If anything else weird happens, you know where to reach us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me on. If you ever make it back to Indiana and you need an extra person for that spy session, just let me know.
All right, I love it. I love Indiana, so it's a good chance I'll be back pretty soon.
Okay.
Strange Familiars is brought to you by our patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. Thank you for everything you do. We could not make Strange Familiars without you. If you like what we do here on Strange Familiars and you'd like to help us make the show and get extra content besides, you can become a patron at Patreon, patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free versions of the weekly shows, plus extra content. We do full extra episodes of Strange Familiars, at least one, sometimes more, every month, exclusive for our patrons. Patreon patrons also get to take part in an ongoing paranormal experiment, which hopefully, if we get all the parts complete, will kick off this month. It's not too late to join in on that. Actually, it won't be too late at any point for patrons to join in on that. You can hop in on that any step along the way. That's another bonus for Patreon patrons. Once again, it's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's also an option on Apple Podcasts. The program there is called Patron of the Strange. Apple Podcast patrons also get the weekly shows without commercials and the bonus episodes monthly. And I'd like to thank our patrons no matter where they're signed up. Thank you so much. It's a huge help. All right, before we get to our curiosity of the week, we have to thank Lisa
For the bunny shirts.
for the bunny shirts. I'm trying to see if she listed the name of the restaurant she works at. She works at a restaurant. They sell these bunny shirts. She said they reminded her of the Bunny Man, so she sent us each one. She sent me a long sleeve one and you a short sleeve one. So thank you so much, Lisa. I will wear my bunny
It is the season.
with bunny pride.
I was just looking over. I'd kind of totally forgotten that I have a left-in bunny collection, and it's time to get them out for the year. Bunnies are on their way.
Oh, there's the bunny on the card. It's a skiing bunny, which I guess would be a ski bunny.
Yeah. Odds of me becoming a physical rabbit versus being able to know how to ski are
About 50-50.
about 50-50.
The odds of me choking on rabbit hair.
Oh, yeah, that's way higher.
Yeah, we have rabbits shed twice a year,
For 6 months.
6 months at a time. Yeah,
There's just a layer of bunny over everything.
yeah. It's just what you have when you have rabbits. I mean, you got to get used to having rabbit hair and hay, bits of hay
Everywhere.
everywhere.
It's like having a small horse.
Yeah, it is. And living in a barn. All right, this here curiosity of the week, Allison. This is some sort of photography, and I'm going to say that's not a daguerreotype. You're testing me here. You're waiting to see if I can figure out what it is. Is it an old tintype?
No.
It's an ambrotype.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't a daguerreotype. I got on my second try.
Well, yeah, it's kind of because I know everybody says, "Oh, well, tip it a little bit," and if it starts to look almost like a glass negative, that's kind of a good sign. And you only get that totally mirror-like background with daguerreotypes, and that doesn't have it. So,
So, remind us again, what year were ambrotypes? Roughly. What are the years for ambrotypes?
well, roughly mid 1850s up until Civil War era. It starts to wane a little bit
So,
in America, but like ambrotypes were much more common in Europe. They kind of missed a lot of the tintype movement. And
it's still amazing to me that, we regularly have images of people, maybe from,
175 years ago.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah, who was that lady?
Yeah.
Like, this is the last, I always talk about like the second death, but like this is like an insurance policy for second death.
yeah, I guess so.
That's what photography is. And this lady, while she's not identified by name, you can still stare at her the way she looked in the late 1850s.
Yeah, it's amazing.
She doesn't look happy, and she's probably way younger than us, but she looks...
So it would have been in a case. This is just in,
Yeah.
What do you call that?
It's in the has the preserver and the mat and the glass on it.
Okay.
And it's 9th plate size. So a little smaller than what would be sort of the most common 6-plate size.
All right. And that's going to be our curiosity of the week. I'll take a photograph of that photograph. Mm-hmm. And I'll put that photograph of the photograph in the show notes.
Do people still say meta? Is that something that people say?
Probably.
Oh, yeah, but now it refers to something
Yeah,
entirely different.
If you click on that image in the show notes, it'll take you to our Etsy shop where you can purchase that or other curiosities of the week, those that are left. While you're at Etsy, check out our other offerings. My new book is there. I have never minded the loneliness, hermits and their stories. If you like the hermit stories we do on Strange Familiars, it's many hermits we covered on Strange Familiars, plus a lot more in the book. If you get it from us on Etsy, it comes signed. All my other books are there, those that are still in print. If you get those from us on Etsy, they'll come signed as well. There's Strange Familiars t-shirts there, stickers, patches, artwork, prints and originals, Monstrous March, artwork I do for the show. If I did the artwork for the show this week, it should be up there. Allison has various bits of ephemera and other old photographs up there as well. Our shop name is Lost Grave, but if you go to Etsy and type in Strange Familiars, you should see our stuff pop up. Clicking on that should take you over to our shop in the real world, off the internet. You can find us at State Theater Vintage in Columbia, Pennsylvania. Allison has a stand there. Got copies of my books there as well,
I do.
including the new one.
Yes. It's got its own shelf.
And Black Rose Antiques in Hanover. We have a stand there that we share with Chad. And you can pick up All kinds of stuff there, both ours and Chad's. Chad's got a lot of wool clothes and axes and woodsman gear, and we have a vast selection of things there as well, including my books are there too. So check that out. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, but also subscribe to Chad's channel as well. Ruck Rabbit Outdoors. You can find them both there. Follow us on Instagram.
At Strange Familiars.
At Strange Familiars. One word, no underscore. All right. Keep your eye out for more Monstrous coming in Monstrous March. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. We're on Instagram, at Strange Familiars, one word, no underscore. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Strange Familiars. There's a group there called the Strange Familiars Gathering. You can join that and chat with other listeners and people who enjoy spooky and paranormal type stuff. For Strange Familiars merch, it's strangefamiliars.com/merch, and you can find us all the time at strangefamiliars.com.
By